Hey, what's going on, everybody? SirDaVinci here with another weekly vendor reset video for the division. This week, I guess the week for the weekend, they're having the free play time. So anyone that does not have the game and actually wants to try it out, I believe my friend was talking about it because he wanted me to play it with him. But I believe this weekend they are having free play time to try this game out, so definitely check it out. Obviously, I know there's a lot of hate for the game, but it's definitely still a good game. For people who have been around since the start, obviously it gets a little stale after a while. You run out of things to do, but there are definitely a lot of things to do, and if you get into the game fully and get to max level and try out survival, which actually you don't need to be max level, that is currently and probably it will always be my favorite game mode in the game. And I'm really looking forward and hoping to see a Division 2, probably not too soon because they're doing YouTube content, nothing like DLC or anything but updates and regular additions to the game like other game modes for Last Stand and stuff like that. But either way, let's get to the vendor reset. Alright, so as always, we're going to start here in the base of operations hub at the special equipment vendor, and we are first going to look at the exotic weapons here. First off, we got the Liberator, which has deadly and focused and responsive, which actually, two of those abilities are actually quite good. Deadly doesn't work as well with assault rifles as it does SMGs, due to the fact that SMGs having that base critical hit chance. But either way, if you do stack critical hit chance instead of headshot damage, responsive is very good, especially in PvP. For the fact that most of your confrontations are going to be up close, and if not, then suggestion would probably be to use like snipers or something like that at that point. And also, it's also a pretty good ability in PvE as well, at least for me. I know a lot of people try to say stay away from the enemies, which is actually a pretty good thing because you don't really want to get cornered or anything, but at the same time, I do try to get decently close so I can make sure I hit all of my headshots with assault rifles especially. Next up, we got the Cassidy, which has Determined and Self-Preserved. The Pecan this week has Ferocious and Fierce. Ferocious is actually a really good talent for PvE, especially with LMGs, due to the fact that they are a very good PvE weapon. But having it not in the third slot, which obviously you can't get it on the Pecan because it has that Pecan special talent, it's going to have a decently high electronics requirement. It's not too high, so if you do run a little bit of electronics, you should not have an issue getting it. But it's very good against enemies with shields and obviously yellow named enemies and bosses. Next up, we have the Centurion, which has Proficient, and the Historian this week has also Proficient and Vicious. So this one I'm definitely going to skip this week. Not really too good talents to have for sniper rifles. Next up here in the same vendor also, we have a classic AK47 here with 22% enemy armor damage, 24.1 thousand base damage. It's got Sustained, Deadly, and Competent. Competent is perfect on the third slot because it does require some electronics, and it's a very good talent. Weapon damage increased by 10% for 15 seconds after using a skill, so if you're using something like First Aid, Booster Shot, and you pop that really quick at the start of a fight, you're going to have that extra 10% damage, or if you're using Pulse, same thing. Deadly, like I said before, isn't the greatest talent to have for assault rifles, so you could obviously roll that away and keep Sustained, which will keep you alive more, so preferably something to be used in PvE, due to the fact that if you were going to use a talent that heals you, I would suggest Predatory because it actually heals quite a lot over time, but it is a pretty big chunk of health. And if you're using a med kit or something like that at the same time, you're going to regenerate your health pretty quick. So it's up to you whether or not if you want to get this to roll away Sustained or Deadly for something like Brutal, Responsive, or Destructive if you're using it in PvE. But this is at least a decent AK. I believe that base damage is actually quite high too. Alright, and as always, now we're going to scroll through the gear set pieces here in the special equipment vendor. Alright, and for gear set piece of the week in the special equipment vendor, I'm going to point out this Reclaimer backpack here, which has 1272 electronics, 1329 base armor, 11,885 health, and 16% burn resistance. The minor attribute, the best thing to have there is the ammo capacity. And then for the major attribute, I believe health is actually one of the best things to have there. If we look at a couple other things, you get skill power, which complements Reclaimer a bit, because Reclaimer is primarily for like healing builds, support builds. So you're gonna want to have your electronics up a bit so that you can heal more. But yeah, that's why this is a pretty good, nicely rolled one, is the fact that you're going to have a little bit of survivability gained from the health, unless you choose to roll that away for skill power or something else. But personally, I would suggest rolling away the burn resistance for ammo capacity, and it's already got a very high roll in electronics on it, which is very good. So if you guys are looking to run a support build and you need a backpack for Reclaimer, this is definitely a pretty good one to pick up. Alright, still here in the special equipment vendor down at the weapon mods. We have a nice extended mag here with 110% magazine size, 4% critical hit damage, and 4.8% rate of fire. I believe the rate of fire can go up to about 5.6%, and the critical hit damage, I would personally suggest getting something like reload speed or critical hit chance in that spot instead, due to the fact that 4% critical hit damage isn't all that much. But this is definitely a very good extended mag to get if you still need one, because of the fact that it has rate of fire on top of obviously the major attribute being magazine size. So definitely grab this one if you need them. Only 192 Phoenix credits, so not bad. And also here we have a large suppressor. This one, the only reason I'm pointing it out is due to the fact that the Bullfrog, or what used to be the FAMAS anyway, is still a pretty good weapon to be using. It still puts out very good DPS if you can control the recoil, which I personally can't really, at least not on console. So I usually don't use it, but if you are, this can only be used on heavy weapons or bigger guns, so it can't be used on SMGs, which is where you'd usually want to use it, because 18% critical hit damage complements the critical hit chance on SMGs. 5% optimal range is very good on SMGs due to the fact that they have a closer drop-off for bullet damage, so they're usually used for up close, and optimal range will increase the range at which the damage will stay high and not drop off as quickly. And then 2.5% critical hit chance, obviously nice to have also. So this is a pretty good suppressor for the Bullfrog, like I said, due to the fact that because its recoil is so hard to control, stacking headshot damage on it isn't always the greatest idea. For me personally, I stack critical hit damage instead and critical hit chance, because of the fact that I can't really keep it focused on the head very often, so I usually aim for the lower torso, and then that way the recoil goes up toward the head, and I focus more on trying to get more critical hit damage, because it's easier to get while shooting people in the body. Obviously you're not going to get headshots, so that's really the only reason I would be using this on any weapon other than SMGs, which obviously it can't be used on. I guess you could use it on LMGs if you'd like, but I wouldn't suggest using it on snipers, due to the fact that you're going to be aiming for heads anyway, so you want to stack headshot damage with those. And lastly here, we have a Pro Red Dot sight with 18% critical hit damage, 4.5% optimal range, and 2% accuracy, which is great for SMGs. This one can be used on SMGs, unlike the suppressor. 18% critical hit damage, I believe, can be up to 19%. 4.5% optimal range is nice. I think that can go up to 5%, but optimal range on SMGs, like I was just saying before, is really nice. And then 2% accuracy. Obviously SMGs aren't as accurate as assault rifles or other things like that, so having a little boost of accuracy does not hurt. Alright, now in the base of operations hub, still moving on over to the special blueprints vendor. This week we have the Super 90, classic M44, firearms knee pads, stamina backpack, and the compensator. Now, ones I would like to point out this week are the classic M44 carbine, due to the fact that it's a bolt-action sniper, and this one specifically does not allow you to have a underbarrel attachment on it. And to compensate for that, it is one of the highest base damage sniper rifles in the game. As you can see, for my firearms at least, it can go up to 137,000 base damage. For anyone looking to run not necessarily a one-shot build, because they are pretty hard to build, but looking to build a very strong sniper build, which could be very effective in both PvE and PvP. You get someone a little weak and then pop their head off, or pop their head off and then finish them off with whatever else you got. This is definitely a good sniper to pick. And also the other one I want to point out is the compensator, due to the fact that for some people like me, not necessarily with the lightweight M4, but other assault rifles, like I said, like the Bullfrog, it's very hard to keep some very high rate of fire assault rifles steady. So having stability on the muzzle is not a bad idea. For me personally, I try to get a stability mod for my underbarrel, due to the fact that you can get headshot damage on your muzzle, and you can't get headshot damage on your grip. So Either way, though, if you need a little bit of extra stability, 200 Phoenix credits to be able to make a bunch of compensator mods is pretty nice to get increased stability on whatever weapon you can't seem to control as well. Oh, and like usual, just like every other week, I want to point out that if I have already purchased a blueprint, which actually there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 blueprints, or 5, sorry, that are like power level 34 this week for me at least. So there might be a blueprint this week that's there that I've already purchased, which you won't see on my screen. So definitely still go to the blueprint vendor even if you watch this video, just to see if there's anything that I have purchased that you did not. Alright, moving upstairs in the base of operations over to the advanced weaponry vendor here, we scroll down to find a pretty nice MP5 ST here with 21% critical hit chance, 16.5 thousand base damage. This one's rolled with brutal, commanding, and deadly. Deadly is obviously one of the best talents you can get on SMGs due to the fact that you want to stack critical hit chance and damage. And 15% critical hit damage is very nice to have, especially if you have the max cap of critical hit chance at about 60%. Commanding is the one you would be rolling away. Brutal isn't the best talent to have on SMGs because of the fact that you're primarily focusing on just getting the criticals. But obviously, if you can aim for the head and keep a consistent shot at it, then it's still not a bad talent to have, especially in PvE. And most of your PvE targets like to sit still for a decent amount of time, especially when you're up close to them when they're shooting you and you're kind of trading off, so you can be able to aim at the head for quite a while on them. But yeah, like I said, rollaway commanding for what I would say probably responsive, I think would probably be the best one to get there due to the fact you want to be close with SMGs. And especially in PvP, if that's what you're going to be using this in, then you're going to be up close in all your gunfights most of the time anyway. So definitely a pretty decent MP5 here for base credits. Alright, still in the advanced weaponry vendor here, I'd like to point out this decent, at least, classic M60 here. I used to use LMGs quite a bit, and primarily the M60 over others. This one here has 11% damage to targets out of cover, which is actually kind of on the low side. I believe 14% is the max, and this one's got 20.7 thousand base damage. This one's rolled with Destructive, Deadly, and Meticulous. Deadly not necessarily being the greatest talent on LMGs due to the fact that you're going to be using something like headshot damage, or other things, not necessarily focusing on crits, but it is still LMGs are still a pretty good weapon to stack crit on, though, either way if you choose to do that. LMGs being a very PvE focused weapon, having destructive is great because most of the time you're going to be fighting enemies with shields. I believe the veteran and higher, so like the purple and yellow and boss, obviously are going to be having, not all yellows, but most of them are going to be having shields, so having an extra 15% damage against those is nice. One thing I would like to suggest here, Meticulous is actually, at least in my opinion, a decent talent to have on LMGs. I know a lot of people say, well, if you put an extended mag on it, you got over 200 bullets in the mag, at least on the M60, so you don't really need to reload very often. But at the same time, those times where you do need to reload suck because reload speeds on LMGs are slow as heck. So having Meticulous means that if you're consistently firing the weapon and getting kills, you're going to have a 25% chance to instantly refill the mag. So as long as you can take 50 bullets or less to kill an enemy, then you're almost guaranteed to get at least one mag refill. So you're pretty much never going to have to reload that M60. You don't have to stack any reload speed on any of your attachments or anything like that. But another thing that I would suggest, since this is going to be being used in PvE, you could roll away Meticulous for something like Ferocious, which stacked with Destructive is very good at taking out bosses and other enemies that have shields and elites and stuff like that. So definitely a thing to think about, but decent M60, like I said, for base credits again. So anything in this vendor is pretty much free to buy. You should have pretty much a lot of base credits. For me, I've got, what do I got, 144 million, so don't really have much to worry about there. But either way, definitely check this one out. Still here in the advanced weaponry vendor, we scroll down to find an Omega rifle suppressor here with 18% headshot damage, 4% critical hit damage, and 2.5% critical hit chance. These are the exact 3 stats that you want to roll on your muzzle if you're using an assault rifle or a sniper. Obviously, like I said before, having some stability on it on high rate of fire assault rifles does not hurt at all, but at the same time, I guess it kind of does. You could personally, I would suggest keeping the critical hit chance and dropping the crit damage for the extra stability. Obviously, you can't roll the stats away and get different rolls, but what you want to go for if you want to have that extra stability is get rid of the critical hit damage and go for stability over that. But either way, if you're looking for a primarily just damage, straight damage focused muzzle to have on your weapon, then this is very good for it. Obviously, you can't get this on SMGs, and I wouldn't suggest it anyway, due to the fact that I would suggest a muzzle that has crit hit damage over headshot damage as the main attribute. So this is still a pretty good one to pick up if you need any muzzles for your assault rifles or snipers or even LMGs. Alright, so we're finally out of the base of operations here. We're moving up toward the northwest to the Autumn's Hope safe house. Here at the gear vendor, we scroll down to find... I don't really know whether or not to say this is good or bad or somewhere in the middle. But we got some Savage gloves here with 1137 firearms, kind of on the low side. But it does have Savage, obviously, which increases critical hit chance by 7% against targets out of cover, which in PvP at least, most of your targets are going to be out of cover, at least most of the time. This one comes with critical hit damage already on it, which is great, pistol damage, which is not so great, and shotgun damage. So this is why I kind of thought this is an okay pair of gloves. At the same time, it could be good for people using certain builds. So shotgun damage is the one you're going to want to keep. Roll away the pistol damage, but obviously if you have a better pair of Savage gloves, don't buy these due to the fact that they're going to be restricted to being used for shotguns only. Not necessarily restricted to it. Obviously, you can use them with an assault rifle if you want, but you're not going to be... That's basically wasting a major attribute slot because you could get something like assault rifle or SMG or even marksman rifle damage there instead of the shotgun. But if you are running like a striker build, it could be quite helpful to have these gloves. So definitely think about it. Decent pair of gloves at least if you are looking for some. Alright, next up here at Dante's Run safe house, we go in the gear vendor and find a nimble holster. Nimble, as you guys might already know, is going to be getting a slight nerf. It was going to be a major nerf, but it's now pretty slight due to that it's basically the only thing changing is that the health that you get from it is going to be over time rather than instant. So nimble will still be effective for anyone who wants to use it. This one here, as all three stats on it, firearm, stamina, and electronics, are kind of on the low side, 1170, 1137, and 1126, but it does already come with major attribute of reload speed, which, at least for me personally, I suggest to have that as the major attribute on all your holsters. That's practically 20% increase of reload speed. That'll help with your DPS on any gun, no matter what you're using. So at that point, you keep that, and you can roll away whatever one of the major attributes you want to primarily focus on to get it as a higher roll. I believe the highest rolls are like 1260 or 1272 or something like that. So definitely check this one out if you need a nimble holster. Alright, so next up toward the southeast corner of the map at the last call safe house, one that I have been kind of waiting for that I haven't really seen quite often at all is a first wave X45 here. It comes with Harmful and obviously Expert, which is the guaranteed pistol talent. But having Harmful is probably one of the best things you can have on a pistol. I'm going to explain it, but let's start off here with the fact that it's 15.9 thousand base damage, 625 rate of fire, and 15 bullets. It can also have every attachment that a pistol can have. The maximum, obviously, you can't have a scope on it like the revolvers, but other than that, you can have everything. So the reason I like having Harmful on my pistols is due to the fact that you pretty much never use your pistol. And because of that, I know that at one point the 93R was pretty good, and obviously it can still be pretty good, but I personally can't keep control of the recoil on console. But this one here, having Harmful, the reason I use basically gives a purpose to your pistol. Obviously, you're not going to be using your pistol to try and take a guy's health down. Obviously, if it's wicked weak and you need to reload, I'll pull out your pistol really quick and finish him off due to the fact that Expert increases the damage by 100% when targets below 30% health. Having Harmful, say a guy's running away, it works almost like having Harmful on a semi-automatic sniper. Guy's running away, and you're not using Predator's Mark build, pull out your pistol, shoot him a few times, get that bleed on him, and slow his ass down. It works quite well. I've used it before, and I've had it used against me before I even thought about it. And that's exactly why I thought about it, was because someone used it against me. And it's quite helpful. And the fact that it's a first wave X45, it's one of the higher damage semi-automatic pistols, and it has a 15 bullet mag on top of the fact that you can obviously throw a magazine on it to increase that magazine size to 30 or more. You can get a nice muzzle on it with whatever you want, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, headshot damage, whatever you want to use on it. And you can put a small laser sight on the bottom too. So definitely grab this one. I am doing it myself too. If you guys, if you don't find purpose in your pistol and you need a purpose, then definitely do this. Obviously, you can roll away the talent if you'd like. If you would also like, you could roll away expert and try to get something like cool headed, which is also another pretty good talent to have on pistols. Since you can only get it on, I think, pistols and snipers. I think those are the only two weapons that can have cool headed. So definitely take advantage of that. Try and get your skills cooldowned a lot quicker. Alright, now that we are through with the safe houses, we are moving into the dark zone checkpoints. And first off, here at the East 53rd Street dark zone checkpoint, we go into the vendor here to find a prototype performance mod here with 7% turret health. I've gone over this mod in multiple last videos, so I'm not going to try to not make this one too lengthy, but this one I highly suggest. I personally have not tried a turret build or a Firecrest build, but I've had it used against me so very often, and the reason why I suggest this mod, if you are using a Firecrest build, is the fact that your fire turret is a very big distraction and a very big, it's extremely obnoxious to anyone that has to fight against it. Obviously, you're risking a few things, or sacrificing, primary damage or health to keep you alive, in order to have a very effective fire turret with high skill power, but it comes in handy, especially if you're running a team and you just want to be like that distracting nuisance. Having the extra turret health, for me personally, a instance that I ran into fighting against one, and just kind of putting some thought into it, was I went to destroy a guy's turret because it kept setting me on fire, and it was really annoying. So I went to go shoot it, and I felt like my bullets were just Nerf darts. Like, the thing had so much health, it was taking forever to destroy that at some point it was just like, alright, the heck with this, move on. Because what happens is the turret distracts you to focus fire on it, and the more health it has, the longer it's going to take for that person to destroy it, meaning your teammates or even yourself can take advantage of that person being distracted by the turret and pump 3 shots into him without having to worry about taking fire back. So you're setting him on fire, doing the fire damage. You are potentially lighting him on fire, which it makes them unable to fight back at all until they brush the fire off, or if they have the mask that prevents it. And you get to pump 3 shots into him. So obviously you can have, I believe, extra turret damage or turret duration. The duration to me is kind of pointless because most of the time the fights aren't going to last long enough for the duration to matter. If you ask me, having that extra health is going to matter a bit more. And obviously having the increased damage is nice, but if they are, someone who plays pretty smart, they're not going to be getting caught up in it too much, and obviously they can stay away from it, whether it's duration, health, or damage that your turret is doing. But at the same time, if they really just want to get rid of it and it's effing up their team, then definitely check this mod out. Unfortunately, for most people who don't play in the Dark Zone very often, it's going to cost you 21,362 Dark Zone funds, which honestly isn't all that much for me. I never play in the Dark Zone, and I still, after buying some stuff, I still have 21,799 stashed away. So if you're looking to run a Firecrest build primarily, this is definitely the mod I suggest for it. Alright, next up now at the East 42nd Street Dark Zone checkpoint, we have another prototype performance mod here, this one being 4.5% support station healing speed. This one, to me, for anyone running a support build or healing with Reclaimer or something like that, this is the mod that I would personally suggest them use, due to the fact that most of the time you're going to be using a support station, and having that increased healing speed, obviously you can get radius, which is also very nice, due to the fact that if you have like the defibrillator to get people up that are down, and obviously just so that your team can stay more spread out and still get the healing effect from it. But either way, this one is still the one I would suggest, due to the fact that obviously if you're running a healer and you're running any kind of content, whether it be Dark Zone, PvP, Last Stand, anything like that, having your health regenerate quicker is going to help you stay alive a lot longer. So this is definitely the one I would suggest using. Okay, so next up at the East 34th Street Dark Zone checkpoint, we go in a vendor here to find a pretty darn darn nice classic M1A here with 164% headshot damage, which is on the higher side. I believe 170% around there is about the max. 59.6 thousand base damage, which is good for semi-auto snipers. This one's got destructive, toxic, and commanding. Now, destructive is good for PvE. It could also be helpful in PvP, but personally, it's not as effective due to the fact that armor is a lot lower now that they got rid of armor as a major attribute on mods and armor pieces. But so in PvE, this is going to help out a lot against like high-end enemies with shields. Toxic, in my opinion, is one of the best talents to have on semi-automatic snipers due to the fact that you can continuously pump headshots in enemies and have a 15% chance to apply blind, which your enemies are most vulnerable when they're standing still, especially for weapons that you focus headshot damage on, to just keep punching those headshot headshots in to get way increased DPS on them. So having that blind on them will make them stand still and kind of like move around a bit. Not move around, but like sit in one spot and kind of like wave their hands around and stuff like that. So they won't fight back, they won't move, so you get free shots on them, which is very nice to have. Even if you don't continuously use the sniper at that point, you could pull out your assault rifle, whatever your other primary is that you're using, to pump a bunch of free damage into them while they're affected by blind. Now for the third slot, you could roll that away for something like brutal, prepared, or elevated. I'm not sure if you can get that on anything else other than the R700 or the M700, whichever one it is. But if you can, that's another decent talent to have in the third slot. But personally, I would suggest prepared or brutal, preferably brutal. And then that way you can keep punching those headshots in while the enemy's blind, especially since you're going to be aiming for headshots as it is to use toxic. So definitely brutal is probably the way to go on that. Okay, so we are now at the West 42nd Street Dark Zone checkpoint, where we can find a PP19 here, which is actually kind of decent. I haven't personally tried in 1.6 yet the PP19 as my primary submachine gun to deal out damage, but it could potentially be good due to the fact that it has a high base damage, and it also has a very large mag. So this one here has got 22.5% critical hit chance with 17.5 thousand base damage. The PP19 has a stock 53 bullet mag, which means with a 110% magazine size increase, that's about, let's see, 106 plus an extra 5, so about 111 bullets per mag, maybe even a little more. This one's rolled with Dominant, Unforgiving, and Hurried, which is the guaranteed talent on PP19s. So the reason I wanted to point this one out is due to the fact that Unforgiving is a very good PvP talent. It could also be used in PvE, but preferably it is very good in PvP due to the fact that when you're trading shots with somebody, if they don't have Unforgiving and you do, you're going to be getting increased damage the lower your health gets. So that means, say you're trading off at the same amount of DPS as the other person. With Unforgiving, you're going to get, once that first health segment's gone and their first health segment's gone, you're going to get an increase of 10% damage, and they're not going to get an increase of 10% damage. So already, even if you don't get to the 25% damage, you're already going to be winning that fight if you just think about the trading off. So it's a very good talent to have on pretty much any weapon that you're going to be using in PvP other than snipers, really, but more like anything like assault rifles, SMGs, and LMGs if you decide to use an LMG in PvP, which I wouldn't necessarily suggest it, but if it's your preference, then feel free. Hurried, like I said before, with the other SMG, I think it was on an MP5 earlier, especially with the PP19, due to the fact that it has a high mag, you're not going to be reloading as often, but I believe the reload speed is a little slower due to the fact that it has a higher mag. Actually, even though I look at the stats here, and it's actually higher than my currently equipped weapon. But either way, having that increased reload speed is very nice to increase your DPS, just continuously be able to shoot somebody and not have to worry about switching weapons if you run out. And then you could roll away Dominant for something like Deadly is obviously probably the best one for SMGs. Responsive is also very good for those close quarter fights, which is going to be the primary portion of your SMG gunfights. So one of those two talents are the ones I would suggest, and you get yourself a decent PP19. Unfortunately, this is in the Dark Zone, so you're going to have to roll out 416,000 Dark Zone funds in order to get it, if you want to try it. But either way, not a bad PP19. We are now in the Dark Zone at the first safe room here in DZ08, where we will scroll through the Dark Zone special vendor gear set pieces now. Alright, now up here at DZ09 safe room, we will scroll through all the gear set pieces here. Alright, and lastly here at the DZ06 safe room, we will scroll through the gear pieces now. Alright guys, well that will end this week's weekly vendor reset video for the Division. I appreciate anyone who watched and enjoyed or appreciated any of the info I gave in this video. Any feedback is always appreciated in the comments, definitely drop them down below. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I will probably be playing this weekend for sure. Primarily to focus on helping my friend maybe get into the game. He's a real life friend. And he was actually asking me about the whether or not I would play it yesterday. Because he noticed that it was free to play this weekend, and I did not play it with him yesterday, so I'm gonna have to talk to him, see if he wants to play a little bit tomorrow or Sunday, and hopefully I can get him into it. I do not really know anyone in real life who enjoys the game. I did have a couple of friends on launch who played it a bit, and my brother too actually, and he got into it, but they aren't the greatest at the game. Obviously I'm not going to hold that against them, but they don't really play it as often as I do at least, or are into it as much as I am. But hopefully I can get some people into it. Obviously I know a few of you guys have asked me to play with you guys in the comments, but unfortunately it was at very bad times, and I ended up moving on away from the game a little bit, so I wasn't really on it to play it with you guys. So I do apologize for that. I know there was a couple people who I did respond to about potentially doing it, and I just haven't really gotten fully motivated into playing the game a lot again, but I do definitely plan on playing it this weekend, and maybe I'll get hooked back on it. Trust me, I'm not over the game. It's just that I have so many other games that I enjoy playing that they steal me away from playing this game constantly. But yeah, like I said, appreciate anyone who watches and all the feedback that I get, and thank you guys for watching. Adios.